it happened in Puebla. And as I indicated, the armies, both of the armies had modern battle tactics. They were also the French had the up-to-date armament. The armies were actually built similarly. Again, Zaragoza had a great military mind with him. And they had engineers, they had cavalry, they had lancers, they even had medical units in both of them. So even though the French thought that they were outmanning the Mexicans had a strategy, they had some form of organization, and that comes to play at the very end. Now because, as I indicated earlier, there was a need for preparation, trying to get all the supplies there on time to Puebla. Actually, there was a preemptive strike that was done by the Mexican army. The Mexican army actually attacked the French as they were on their way to Puebla in a plateau in order to try to slow them down. The Mexican army knew they were going to lose that battle. They were going to suffer consequences because of that, but they knew that they needed to buy time. So they bought one additional day by attacking the French and slowing them down. And as I indicated, the conservatives in Mexico supported the French army. Some of the conservative Mexican army was actually fighting with the French and actually suffered losses at the plateau as they were trying to get into Puebla itself. The battle was not an extremely long battle. It actually started at about 11:15 a.m. in the morning of May 5th, 1862. That's when the battle started by cannon fire, where the French started to attack the fort, as you've seen in the video before. Now, the way the battle usually runs, and they usually run in those days, the term cannon fodder is actually the fact of getting some of the less valuable, unfortunately, some that they consider the less valuable soldiers, those that are trained less, to be the first ones that do the advances, because they suffered the substantial losses. And in this particular situation, the French did the same thing. They sent the cannon fodder off first, thinking that someone might be over to overwhelm the Mexican defenders, and then send in the most professional soldiers that they had. Well, the cannon fodder soldiers did not do that well. It didn't work out the way they thought it was going to work out. So they got bogged down, and as you saw in the video, they got decimated. A good portion of them got decimated. Now, the one thing about the battlefield is you have to take into consideration the terrain, and you also have to take into consideration the weather. As you saw, the forts are up in an area that's a mountain area, which means you have to climb up. That's the best defensive position for any soldier. Any soldier firing down is a lot better off than the soldier climbing up towards the fort itself that's fortified. But worse than this is a situation where the weather turns on you. For some reason, God was looking over the Mexicans in that particular day, because right after the battle started, it started raining. And of course, rain on bare ground creates mud. Mud slows people down. They can't climb up the hills as fast as they should climb up, which means you're an open target in an open field. And that's basically what happened to the French. The French were not able to move up fast enough. They could not move their professional soldiers up fast enough. Zaragoza, being a professional soldier that he was, he reserved his best troops until he saw that the French were having a hard time trying to get up and trying to move forward. The French general got very discouraged by the fact that his soldiers were not progressing as fast as they should. His cannon fodder was not moving up as fast as it should. So he engaged his professional soldiers 2 hours after the battle started, which was another miscalculation of how to fight the battle. He thought again he underestimated the Mexicans, that they would not be able to hold the fort, that they would not be able to hold their defensive position. That wasn't the case. The professional soldiers also suffered casualties. And it was only until the very last moment that Zaragoza decided that then he would send in his cavalry and his professional soldiers. By that time, the French army was disillusioned. They were disorganized. They were not able to defend their position, and they were basically defeated at that time. The Count Zaragoza, what he did not do, and probably was a wise move on his part, is he did not have the cavalry and some of his other soldiers chase the French any further. Again, because he didn't know, in those days, we didn't have the drones up on the sky, being able to see where everybody is at and so forth, knowing where the pitfalls are at. So he had to make a decision based on what was visible to him at that particular moment. So he did not chase the French any further. He was happy with the defeat that he had done, and he communicated that to Benito Juárez, and in fact, that we had succeeded in the battle itself. The issue of the battle, again, this was a substantial win over a European nation. This was what was to be considered extremely professional soldiers. The French were undefeatable up to that point. Obviously, they miscalculated. They made a lot of bad military decisions, bad strategy, and that came to play. You also were fighting a soldier, a nation, a new nation that was made up not only of the white Mexicans, it was made up now of mestizos. It was made up of people that had taken ownership of the country, that this was their country. They were not going to let a colonial country come in and take over. Again, the battle ended, the Mexicans won, but that was not the end of the war. Because what happened is the French rebuilt. They retooled themselves, they continued the war, and it took them about another year before they were able to defeat Puebla and actually go into Mexico City and take over. And as you saw the history, it's important because this bought time to the U.S. It bought them the time for them to get to Antietam, where the Civil War started to turn in favor of the U.S. Up to that point, the Confederacy had made substantial gains in the Civil War.